And I would note the administration's arrangement with Mountain Pass, I think, is really innovative. Their mine in California is incredibly important, and the factory that they have built in Dallas-Fort Worth, I've been to that factory where they're building rare earth batteries right now. It's incredibly important, and their stated plans in cooperation with the administration is to increase their capacity tenfold. That's critically important for us being able to compete and beat China in this important terrain. Senator Barrasso.
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. Ambassador Pratt, so China controls, 85% of the world's critical mineral processing capacity. In fact, China has control over a significant percentage of Africa's mining sector, and they get things there and take them to China for the processing. And we're taking steps here in the United States to break this dependence. Earlier this month, the Secretary of Energy was in Wyoming with us. The Brook Mine in Wyoming broke ground. It's the first rare earth mine to open in the U.S. in over 70 years. This is going to produce rare earths vital for defense and advanced technologies, critical. So how can the U.S. and African countries collaborate to make sure that we can build some supply chains that challenge China's dominance so that never again will we find ourselves this dependent on China or any foreign source?
Thank you, Senator. We are trying to ensure that the U.S. has the feedstock that it needs of various minerals, including cobalt, lithium, and many others. And so part of the strategy is to leverage commercial access and take advantage of the offers that we're receiving on the continent from various countries, and also to take advantage of financing through the DFC. As you may know, there's a rare earth mine in South Africa that receives DFC financing. In Mozambique, we have a graphite mine that receives DFC financing. These are examples of how we've been able to successfully use the DFC to ensure access to the minerals that we need in the U.S. While we continue to develop domestic capacity on the mining and refining side of the equation.
It just seems to me the Chinese Communist Party has been really targeting investments in African countries in order to expand their political influence, their economic influence, their strategic goals. I mean, you look at the whole Belt and Road Initiative and different things that they've done. I was in Djibouti visiting Wyoming National Guard troops. You fly in and there's this base for ships that they're building right there in this pinch point, the Gulf of Aden, where it comes down to to go up into the Red Sea. It's a narrow area and the big base there. Going into Djibouti, go through Addis Ababa, big terminal for air supply. There's a project, and the chairman knows about this with our time with Senator Inhofe, who has spent a lot of time in Ethiopia, very involved, something called Project Mercy, a hospital. Baylor medical students would go there to train and to help and to learn. And a lot of U.S. involvement there. Used to be a kind of a dirt road, and now it's a beautiful road, and the signs are brought to you by your friends from China, because they built the road. It's a U.S. active medical center that China seems to try to take control over so many areas in terms of their effort to try to go with influence, political, economic, strategic. So, it seems their investments are focused on large projects and natural resources. Can you just talk about what risk these China investments in critical minerals pose to us long-term in the United States if we don't do something to counter it?
Senator, first I'd like to say thank you for mentioning Djibouti, because I served there as U.S. Ambassador for 2.5 years before this assignment, and spent much of my time advocating to try to receive more U.S. investment. We were working very closely with a U.S. company that had a large energy investment there. And I worked very closely with our own government to put money into some strategic security investments, like a peacekeeping center that we're jointly working on with the Djiboutians. And so we have made some major investments there, and we're trying to court additional ones. I think what you mentioned on Africa's involvement is that essentially they've tried to create monopoly situations where they can control pricing and box out any other players on the supply chain, essentially is what they've engaged in through bribes, labor practices, and then price manipulation. And so what we are aggressively trying to do is ensure that U.S. companies get in. I was speaking about all of the companies that approached us at the beginning of this year to be involved in the peace process on Congo, but also to help them secure deals as part of that. And so we're working on an economic framework to achieve that. I think we also need to leverage the DFC. We need to, frankly, leverage a lot of the goodwill that we see on the African continent for wanting to partner with American companies because of our labor standards, because of our transparency and the way that we do business. There are many countries on the continent that come to us and they tell us they would prefer an American company to a Chinese company. No question about it. And so it's our job to ensure that the US companies are getting a fair deal and that we're taking those governments up on the offer and making sure that the deals are nailed down.
Mr. Chairman, I have time for one more question. Thanks. Well, you mentioned the Congo, the DRC. They produce about 80% of the world's cobalt. I saw that Secretary of State Rubio was just involved, and then the President as well, with an agreement between Rwanda and the DRC, a peace agreement after so many years of war. China owns or holds stakes in 15 of the largest copper and cobalt mines in the Congo. The Congo, 80% of the world's cobalt. In 2023, over half of the DRC mine workers reported children working in the sites. 4 out of 5 of the cobalt mine workers reported forced labor conditions. China itself has a well-documented history of forced labor. We know about the Uyghurs and what has gone there. What role should we be playing in terms of investment, in terms of diplomatic efforts in combating this forced labor linked to these supply chains? And what's the best strategy, you think, to eliminate the practices of forced labor going on there?
Senator, I'd say number one is securing deals for U.S. companies and getting American companies into these investments, including on cobalt. Not just cobalt, but lithium is another one we're working on. There's a particular mine in the DRC. And so we are ensuring that those companies which came to us and asked for help, that we are linking them with President Tshisekedi of the Congo's offer very publicly to the United States that he wanted American companies in there doing business, working in these mining sectors. And so we are working very hard to ensure that those deals are nailed down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.